Hello, Peppers. This is Pep. I am Chaz Luchadello.
And I am Dr. David Smith.
Dr. Dave's back. Thank you very much to our guest podcaster on Wednesday, Bill Wyman. Did very well indeed. We broke the world record for talking about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. There was a lot of talk about Ruth Bader Ginsburg. You missed out on all that, Dr. Dave.
I'm sorry, and I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet.
That's okay. It's a tradition for you to not watch anything I produce.
I was, yeah.
Do you have anything to say?
It's going to be an intellectual feast.
That is courtesy of the hand of God, who has become obsessed with Robert Bork.
And why not?
Yes.
Why do you want to be an associate justice of the United States Supreme Court?
Many believe Bork's answer was the death knell of his nomination.
And I think it would be an intellectual feast.
Now, before we move on, do you have anything to say about Ruth Bader Ginsburg that you were busting to say on Wednesday, but you were not either there?
Yeah, I mean, perhaps not so much about Ginsburg herself, about whom I'm sure just about everything has been said. Although if you didn't talk about it, just something I was thinking about this week is, so she, as well as being one of the people who really defended Roe versus Wade, was also a critic of Roe versus Wade in really interesting ways. And she gave this speech in 1993 at University of North Carolina Law School that really codified her criticism of it, which is that, you know, the legal framework that upholds abortion in the United States should not be based on this implied right to privacy, which she regarded as pretty weak. And I think about that every time I teach my students about the implied right to privacy and how you kind of cobble it together from different amendments to the Constitution. And she said, no, it should be grounded in equal protection, you know, which is just this far more kind of solid thing. So not only is that interesting, it was really influential. I remember by the time I got to the US, speaking to liberal law students who were critical of Roe versus Wade, you know, that was basically entirely entirely that Ginsburg argument. So I think just in tribute to Ginsburg, it is worth mentioning not only did she in practice do more to defend Roe versus Wade than anyone else, but she also had the most intellectually coherent critique of Roe versus Wade.
You know, not only did I talk about that on Wednesday,
yes,
but I wish you'd talked to me beforehand because you just put it much better than I did.
Oh,
I was
sure
clowning around for minutes and minutes using all my ums and ahs and inappropriate words. It was pathetic. So thank you for clarifying for people who watched that 5 minutes of our show and thought, what the hell was that?
Okay.
Yeah, Dr. Dave just explained.
What I would like to talk a little bit more about, though, is you know, the realization that Mitch McConnell was hypocritical.
Yes.
So there was, in 2016, as I'm sure everyone knows by now,
Yes.
Mitch McConnell said, we're not going to confirm a Supreme Court. We're not even going to hold hearings into a Supreme Court justice this close to the election. 7 months from the election. The American people should have a chance to decide this.
Yes.
And this becomes known as the McConnell rule. And then, I mean, I don't know how much energy was just wasted on Saturday by people pointing out, what about the McConnell rule? Yeah, I remember there was this like half-hour period on Twitter where people were speculating, oh, maybe he'll, you know, is he or is he not going to want to actually, you know, confirm a Trump judge because that would expose him to hypocrisy. And then there were people who were trying to come up with these really clever takes, like Sean Trende from Real Clear Politics said, well, you know, actually, if Trump doesn't nominate anyone, he said that would be both the politically smart move and the best thing for America.
As if.
Yeah, it's like it's the fact that it would be both the politically smart move and the best thing for America that guaranteed that was never going to happen. So no,
They're the two clues. That
so
wasn't
no.
gonna happen.
Instead, what happens is McConnell says he'll confirm a Trump judge before Trump even knows about the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And I don't know if you saw this sort of surreal
Yeah, we
footage.
played it. Yeah.
Trump at this rally, unaware, while people are chanting out like Ginsburg is dead,
Yeah,
Ginsburg
yeah.
is dead. Very weird. So, okay, but yes. So, inevitably, McConnell said, no, we are definitely...
Yes.
And he did feel the need to come up with some sort of justification for this, which is, oh, no, the rule is the opposite party controls.
Yeah.
When the opposite party controls the Senate. No, that's the wrong. No, okay. Let's be very clear about this. No Republican majority Senate has seated a Democratic nominee for the Supreme Court since 1895.
Yes.
McConnell was not going to be the first one in more than 100 years to do it.
Definitely
Okay,
was not.
Democrats have just got to understand this. A Republican majority Senate is never going to seat a Democratic nominee for the president.
I'd probably argue the
But sorry,
converse.
but
the converse is also
Supreme
going.
Court,
Yeah,
it's
converse will also apply from now on.
From
I
now
think.
on, yes. Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
Democrats had done it a few
They
times.
did. Yeah,
There was
Anthony Kennedy was one of them.
Yeah, Clarence Thomas in 91, David Souter. Anthony Kennedy, 4 of Nixon's judges, 2 of Eisenhower's. Yeah, I'm guessing that's not happening. So McConnell now actually may have invented a genuine rule, but with much more, broader application, which is the opposite party's majority just doesn't confirm. But it's just, this is, it's just not going to happen. And we do have to remember how many things are not in the Constitution. So, yes, Republicans are completely within their constitutional rights to do this. Democrats would be completely within their constitutional rights to just expand the number of judges on the Supreme Court. The problem is, when you get into this game of, well, let's just do what the Constitution allows, the Constitution doesn't say anything really about conducting democratic elections.
Yeah, that's right.
It's only by custom, essentially, by agreement, that that's happened.
It doesn't say the president needs to be a human being. It could be an American-born pig. Just being creative.
What's that? What's that movie?
Ted Cruz?
Yeah. What's that movie? Is it Air Bud?
Yeah, the dog.
There's nothing in the rule book that says a dog can't play basketball.
That's my role.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I do think Republicans are a lot better at getting and using power than Democrats are, or at least they have been since about the time of FDR. And Democrats have just got to learn that, their judges aren't getting appointed if there's a Republican majority Senate. Like, if Biden wants to appoint any justices, Democrats have got to win the Senate.
And one of the things which I was saying on Wednesday, sorry,
Yes.
by
the way, I'm not saying this is right, but
No,
I'm
no.
just saying this is the reality Democrats have to accept.
I'm actually saying, not that's right, but it makes sense that someone from one party wouldn't necessarily rubber stamp a judge from the other party in a political Supreme Court, which is what we've got.
Yes.
And that, for me, the biggest outrage by a mile, which I was explaining on Wednesday, was not that they blocked Merrick Garland. Merrick Garland. It's that they didn't hold the hearing.
Yes.
Because it was the cowardliness of trying to avoid a vote and responsibility.
They probably were going to block Garland anyway.
Yeah, sure, but that's fine. But if you look,
my God, I just realised that Merrick is America, but without an A at the start and the beginning.
Dear.
What does that mean?
I'm glad he was blocked.
Oh. We need QAnon to look into this.
But for me, it was the lack of accountability to their own voters while pretending it was about democratic accountability.
Yes.
Like actual democratic accountability. You say, you know what? We're not gonna vote for this guy. You can listen to him in a hearing.
Yeah.
You can decide for yourself whether we've made a wise decision on your behalf, and then you can vote us out if you don't like it. That's actual democratic accountability.
And, I mean, Trump has actually been the most upfront about this. Said, we've got the numbers, we've got the power.
Absolutely. And by the way, sorry, just before you go on, I was just going to say, people dissing Trump for nominating someone. Obama nominated Merrick Garland. Like, no one's at no point in time has presidents not nominated someone. The question is what the Senate do. That's the question.
Yes,
Although I should say, just quickly on the history, because I went through on the Wednesday show, not our podcast, on the TV show, I went through the history in quite some detail.
Yes.
And I said the only kind of analog was Taney and with Lincoln, which was, I think, it was like 27 days, I think he died out from an election. And Lincoln had the same party in the Senate and opted to not nominate until after the election. But there is a difference with that, I just discovered afterwards, which is at that point in time, the Senate didn't sit.
Right.
Like they had long periods. They obviously didn't have planes.
Yeah,
they
yeah.
didn't have Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
And so when they weren't sitting, there was no point. Like they were just gone
I
for
see.
months.
Okay, yes,
and
yeah.
the Senate was already long gone at that point in time. So there was no point him nominating at that
Right,
point in time.
okay.
Anyway, so keep on going. What you were saying? was just
Yeah,
screwed you
so anyway, this, I mean, yeah, that's also why I never thought there was going to be any electoral calculus involved in this because, there was speculation, well, couldn't Trump, if he didn't nominate prior to the election, actually hold this open as an issue, essentially, to fire up his base? And no, that was always ridiculous. Like, first of all, his base is about as fired up as it could be by this point. Also, I mean, it's just one of the reasons why Republicans are better at politics than Democrats is they understand the basic principle of a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush.
Absolutely. Why take the risk?
Exactly. The electoral politics around this is very, very murky in terms of who it benefits more at the presidential level and also what it does at the Senate level. Whereas the mathematics of replacing a liberal judge with a conservative judge could not be clearer. So, yeah.
Do you know what I reckon is going on with the Democrats?
What?
I think what's going on is we're just seeing a massive bout of remorse for letting Merrick Garland go so easily.
Yes,
I think they all of a sudden just all realised, like, oh my God, we can't really stop this happening.
No.
We should have stopped the first one happening.
Exactly.
That was the one that was so outrageous, and we just let it go. Because they argued about it for like a month, and then they just stopped. They didn't talk about it in the conventions. There were no advertising campaigns. They just let it go.
Yeah.
And I actually we interviewed Heidi Heidkamp today on the Friday show. And I asked her, I don't think it's in the final show, you have to watch the extended interview on our Facebook page.
Which Dakota is she from?
Just the north.
Yep.
To north. I asked her, do you regret not going harder on Merrick Garland? And she was very honest. She said, well, we thought we were going to win.
Yeah.
So we didn't bother. That was a mistake.
By the way, I've got, just to lighten the mood, I've got a North Dakota fact.
Please.
If North Dakota suddenly seceded from the United States, it would have the world's third largest nuclear arsenal.
That is such a good fact.
Yeah.
Oh, hang on. You know what that is? Stat Nugget.
Yeah.
Okay. You weren't that stat nugget.
Yeah. And that's absolutely right. And I mean, in some sense, this really makes Biden the wrong man for the times because I don't think that he's going to be into plans like expanding the Supreme Court. He's actually been appealing a lot to fantasies about bipartisanship and telling Republicans to follow your conscience.
Yes.
He's actually not, you would imagine, the person that you need to push against open doors. But nonetheless, I suppose that is part of his appeal.
I feel, though, that it doesn't matter who's president. You're not going to get 51 Democrats to vote to pack the court.
No.
Joe Manchin voted for both judges.
Yeah.
He's not going to vote to pack the John Hickenlooper, do you think he's going to vote to pack the court?
I don't know. I don't know that much about Hickenlooper. He's a man of mystery.
He's a man who drank gas fluid to convince people that it was safe. He was so into fracking.
Wow, that's extreme.
He's not your man if you're looking for radical left action.
No.
That's all I'm saying. And there'll be a whole bunch of these people if the Democrats
I do
win
remember
their
him
Senate.
getting called a socialist by Republicans in the 2000s, though.
That was very
when
funny.
he was the mayor of Denver.
Let me ask you this: do you just on all the questions that have been asked this week? Let me ask one to you.
Yes.
Do you blame Ginsburg for hanging on past 2013?
I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't think that it's my place to comment on.
It's not like it didn't occur to people at the time.
No, it certainly did. It did occur to people at the time, and she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer in 2009, and she could have retired then and been replaced. I mean, at what point do you ask someone to make that sacrifice on the basis of a very murky political calculation? I don't know. I don't feel in a position normatively to answer that.
I'll tell you why A, agree with you, and
Yes.
B, wouldn't blame her myself.
Yeah.
And that is something that, and this is also from Heidi Heidkamp. We did play this on the show tonight.
Yes, yeah.
That she was saying, one thing we've forgotten with judges is that 'cause we're so caught up in the cynical politics of it.
Yes.
We've forgotten that they are individuals.
Mm.
And that they all have individual merits. And
Yes.
she was saying the thing that she's mourning about Merrick Garland is not there goes a left-wing seat, but she said, in her opinion, Merrick Garland is the preeminent jurist of our generation. And it's a shame that he was wasted not being on the Supreme Court. That's what she was saying. She's saying he had incredible empathy, he's very intelligent, he'd be a brilliant Supreme Court justice. That's what she was saying. You have to agree with her. But she was saying we don't talk about that anymore. And Ruth Bader Ginsburg might be like, I could see people making an argument that she had special qualities as well, and qualities extended past being just a left winger. And
But she wasn't even a left winger in any sense.
Well, there you go.
She's a liberal.
And so an extra 8 years on the court
Yeah.
has its own benefit.
Yes. By the way, for anyone wondering, she was not the most liberal judge on the court at any point.
Yeah, Sotomayor, wasn't it?
Yeah, Sotomayor is now.
Yeah.
Ginsburg never was.
Well, she started off quite moderate, and then
She still was to the end. Like she was never. She was always sort of one or two to the left of the median.
Right,
nothing more to say about that.
okay. What do you think the Democrats should do now, right now? How should they play it? Because there's all these theories going around. There's the impeach every day theory, which is that theory there is basically if you pass a privileged motion, there's two kinds of privileged motions that the House can pass. One is impeachment motions. The other is war resolution motions. So impeachment motions doesn't have to be Trump. It could be Pompeo. It could be Bill Barr, whatever. Impeach a different person every 2 or 3 days. It takes 3 days to process it, essentially. And the Senate can't work on anything else until they've dealt with the privilege motion. So if you just do one after another, you vote to get out of Afghanistan, vote to get out of Iraq, vote to get out of Syria, vote to get out of Yemen, just one after another, and they have to deal with them, and you just wait out 2 months. I mean, I'm not sure that's possible. It sounds like the kind of, like I said on the TV show, it sounds like the kind of thing you see in a movie. But
I mean,
worth a try?
Okay, the first thing is getting it past the point of the election. Right. Now, Trump's been very clear he wants it done by the election because that's where he imagines that the election is going to be decided in the Supreme Court. We'll be talking more about this later. So, I mean, they should definitely try to push it past the election itself.
Through delay.
Yeah. I don't know if it would be possible to push it all the way to the inauguration, but definitely past the election and exact a really high political price. I mean, under normal, so even if they weren't doing delaying tactics, it seems it would be quite difficult to get it done by the election. That vote.
They're holding the hearings on the week of October 12th. That gives them 3 weeks of messing around after the hearings.
Yeah.
So 3 weeks is that's
definitely, for God's sake, guys, just push it past the election. Surely even Democrats can do that.
Maybe. What about the hearing? How would you deal with the hearing? Would you go full Kavanaugh on her? Because I personally think that Rush Limbaugh reckons they shouldn't even have a hearing, which they don't need to. They don't need to have it. They only started having hearings in the 20th century.
Yeah.
He said, Rush Limbaugh, quote, "When the vote count's assured, go straight to the floor for a vote. You know why? That protects senators from being all out attacked by Democrat mobs. It stops a whole bunch of that. We don't want to give Kamala Harris the opportunity to grandstand in that committee as a vice presidential running mate of plugs," he says. Plugs is kind of funny. My view is that Rush Limbaugh is an idiot because I think the hearing can only help the Republicans because there is going to be endless shit shows about let's say Amy Coney Barrett in the media for as soon as they announce her. It'll be, she did this, she did that, she did that. The hearing gives her a chance to personalize herself, to humanize herself. And I've seen her before and she is pretty demure and gentle and she's the direct opposite of what she's going to be portrayed in the media. So the hearings will work for them, I reckon, especially if the Democrats come on hard. I think they'll play the fact that she's a woman being bullied by
This is
Sheldon
assuming
Whitehouse.
that it's ACB who gets nominated.
Yeah. As I said, it might not be, but if
No.
it was her, and
We were saying on the way over, she seems to be such a politically perfect choice that that's a reason why you'd suspect Trump wouldn't choose her.
and also the Republicans are just drooling to do the anti-Catholic thing. They want it so bad because the Catholics are basically a 50-50 religion, and so that's kind of swingy. So they'd love to play up
Religion
the
as
anti-Catholic.
swingers.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think actually the hearing could help the Republicans if the Democrats
You're
aren't very
questioning Rush Limbaugh's political judgment?
careful. So, but what do you think?
Chaz, I don't know.
No, that's fair enough.
I'm not. What would you call someone wose really into hearings? I'm not much of a hearing
A
hound.
robot?
Yeah.
A fictional character?
Nah, just not much of a hearing hound.
That's okay.
I think this has been your life since about the age of 10.
Sadly.
But I'm not so into that.
Okay, all right. Well, then, how do you make you just said Republicans need to pay a price. I agree with you about that.
Yes.
How do you make them pay a price? What would you do to make them pay that price?
Well, if it's pushed past the election and Trump loses the election,
Yeah.
there's going to be a massive, massive legitimacy problem,
Yep.
which I think actually would have potential political costs for senators facing election in 2 years' time. In general, there is a huge legitimacy crisis developing, given that you have now obviously under the rules of the US Constitution, you don't need the majority vote to win. In fact, you don't even need the vote to win under the Constitution. But over the last couple of centuries, Americans have got pretty used to the idea that it's pretty much going to match up with majority will. 2000 was a very weird sort of abomination, but the vote was very close then. Last time around, it was 2.8 million votes is the discrepancy. That's pretty out of whack. This time around, there's the potential of an even bigger, there's the potential of like a 5 million vote popular win by Biden, but Trump's still winning the Electoral College. It doesn't matter what you say about the Constitution. By that point, people are going to be very, very angry with the system because there is a basic democratic norm about votes having equal value, which that just violates spectacularly and which is really not justifiable on any sort of grounds of fairness at all. And as the great philosopher, economist Amartya Sen pointed out, really, the idea of equality is the only political idea that survived the 20th century. Every major normative political theory posits equality of something, whether that's equality of liberties, whether that's equality of economic outcomes, equality of dignity. It's all about equality, and there is no grounds for justifying massive discrepancies between the popular vote and the Electoral College on grounds of equality or fairness. I've seen people try, and it's you have the but then New York and California would decide,
Which is just bullshit.
no. You've got but it's really important that rural people have more representation. I don't see any reason for that.
But also, I know you know this, but just for the viewers and listeners, rural representation has nothing to do with the Electoral College.
No.
Because it's the biggest swing states that get the attention. It's Florida.
Yeah.
It's Ohio.
Yeah.
It's not like New Hampshire. New Hampshire it's not super rural, but it's not very urban.
Yeah.
But no one cares about New Hampshire, even though it's the swingiest of swing states.
Yeah.
Because it's small.
Yeah.
They care about the big swing states.
Yes.
And they don't care if they're urban or rural. They just care if they're 50-50.
Yeah. And so to add to the legitimation crisis, you then have an awareness that counter-majoritarian features of the Constitution, control of those is control of everything at the moment. So the Senate and the Supreme Court. And when you're going to have a situation where a president who didn't get the majority of the popular vote is nonetheless in a position to appoint a third of the Supreme Court, including one seat that should have been appointed by Obama. Or if you were to apply McConnell's rules consistently, one seat that should have been appointed by the next president. As I say, it doesn't matter. We say, well, that's allowable under the Constitution. This is going to grate so badly against people's basic sense of fairness that this is going to cause an uprising.
I have to look. I do agree about, especially when you're talking about the Electoral College.
Yeah,
I feel like the Supreme Court element of the outrage will not hurt nearly as much if you don't have the popular vote Electoral College disjunction.
No, that's true.
And the evidence I have for that is a poll from Marquette Law. Now, this is from 2019, admittedly.
Yes.
So I don't think the numbers changed much.
Yeah.
Of people who said what their views about what happened in 2016 with Merrick Garland, 73% said it was the wrong thing to do. But it didn't change the vote, did it?
No.
So I don't think people care about process in the long run. But when you throw in that kind of stuff, then it becomes dynamite. I do agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, if Trump did actually win the popular vote, just based on what I've seen before, a lot of this legitimation crisis would go away. Like, when I was in the US in 2004, there was a widespread sense of majoritarian dissatisfaction with George W. Bush, but then he went on to win the popular vote in 2004 by 3 million votes. That was one of the weird examples of where John Kerry actually came quite close to winning the election, even being 3 million votes out. I think it came down to Ohio. 70,000 votes in Ohio. I remember being at a football game the following week that had 110,000 people there. Yeah. I'm thinking, wow, that's, this is, I can see the number of people on whom this election depended. That, by the way, if you're wondering how on earth that happened, it was because I think George W. Bush was racking up such huge margins in Texas.
Maybe, I don't remember.
Yeah, I think that's why that was the case. Yeah. So, but at the moment, and we'll talk about polls later, it doesn't look that likely that Trump is going to win the popular vote.
No, it doesn't. I was going to say one more thing before we sort of move on a little bit about making them pay a price.
Yes,
I feel like the price that I would try to make them pay, and I'd be focusing on now, is the mother of all scare campaigns.
What's that?
Well, but between abortion, between Obamacare, just everything, every single thing. Assume they are all gone and use the fact that Biden has $100 million advantage to just bomb them with ads based, act like Republicans would. like the full scare campaign. I feel like if I was the Democrats, that's what I'd be doing. I wouldn't be worrying about the process arguments on the Supreme Court.
That's true.
And hearings and shit, which no one cares about. I'd be talking about...
Except you.
Except for me. I'd just be bombing them with 1 trillion ads about you are about to be uninsured. Your teenage girl will not be able to have an abortion. Yeah, etc.
Maybe don't run that one, Chase. Maybe let's stick with you are about to be uninsured.
Sure. Okay. There are different schools, Dr. Dave. but anyway, let me size a poll. This is a poll.
Don't give Chaz an ad account.
Mate.
Yes, he's very, very familiar with TV and the media. I'm not so sure about the political messaging here.
I play hardball, Dr. Dave. I play for keeps. There was a poll I was scrambling around for minutes on Wednesday. I couldn't find. I've brought it for you guys because I promised it was a good one about abortion, and that is that a surprisingly large number or percentage of Trump's support are pro-abortion.
That's not surprising. Yeah. That's not even surprising.
Well, let me give you the numbers, and then you can tell me about how it's not surprising. Yeah. From the 2016 Cooperative Congressional Election Study results, 22% Trump's voters pro-choice.
How are they operationalizing that?
In the state, I don't know anymore.
See, this is a really key question.
Yep.
Of how you actually operationalize pro-choice.
Yeah, sure.
If you're saying current framework, then that's something very different from saying, no, we need to actually expand abortion rights.
Oh, yeah. I'm assuming that means.
See, there's
that means
at any
Trump.
given time, 70% of the country says that they support the current framework.
Yeah, I'm just talking about. I'm just talking in comparison to the ads which I will be running about your teenage girl about getting an abortion. Okay, let me give you some states. Iowa, 25% of Trump supporters pro-choice. Florida, 24%. Pennsylvania, 24%. Michigan, 24%. Arizona, 21%. Wisconsin, 20%. Ohio, 20%. That's a lot of Trump supporters. If you run a good scare campaign that you can possibly peel off. And so I just throw that out there. It only takes a few points. You know? Yeah. So yeah,
although those are probably people who aren't that strongly motivated by that as an issue.
Maybe.
I would suggest.
Yeah, I understand your logic.
Yes.
It is wise. Okay, let's move on a little bit. Let's move on to Scandal Us.
Oh God.
We got hand of God, we have to get a sting for that. We absolutely.
Are we going to put a scandalous song in?
Why not?
I don't think we're going to get sued.
Okay, I've got a few of these here. Let's go. First of all, the sexual assault claim against Trump, Amy Doris. No one's even talking about it, but I just feel like it's weird that the sitting president has been accused of sexual assault and people just move on. I know he's been accused before, but...
Well, this has been the story of the last 5 years.
No, I know, but I feel like every single time it happens, you should mention it. Like, it's a weird place we've got to. Where you go, oh, well, the president's been accused again.
Yeah, no.
Oh, jeez. What's for dinner? Yeah, so I'll just go through this rapidly. Okay, so Amy Doris was a model. This is in the 90s. She told The Guardian she went with a boyfriend US Open tennis with Trump. She got up to go to the bathroom, which was just behind their box. When she came out, Trump was waiting outside. She says, initially I thought that he was waiting to go to the bathroom, but that wasn't the case. She alleges that he forced himself on her after a brief exchange. She told him to go away, but he just shoved his tongue down my throat and I was pushing him off, and then that's when his grip became tighter and his hands were very gropey and all over my butt, my breast, my back, everything. I was in his grip and I couldn't get out of it. I don't know what you call that when you're sticking your tongue just down someone's throat, but I pushed it out with my teeth. That's an image. I was pushing it and I think I might have hurt his tongue. Okay. That's her story. Okay. She told a friend at the time in New York and her mother at the time, both of whom The Guardian has spoken to since. She spoke to a therapist and friends she spoke to in the years since. The Guardian, I believe, has spoken to them as well. She has plenty of photos of her with Trump at the time as well.
Right.
Because it was over a number of days. She says she doesn't remember if she told her boyfriend all the details. It was him that she was with at the time. But she says she asked him to tell Trump to leave her alone. She said she told him, he's all over me. I can't deal with this. You have to do something. Now, Trump's attorneys say that the boyfriend told them that he has no recollection of her telling him such a story. I don't think The Guardian have spoken to the boyfriend yet. Trump's attorneys have also said, on the other side, that the day after the alleged assault, Doris returned to Trump's box at the US Open, and then after that, on another day, they went to the Versace memorial together, this whole group of people, and she chose to sit next to Trump when she could have sat on the other side of her boyfriend, away from Trump. I'm not issuing any judgments or speculations. I'm just saying that is what's been reported, and it's been completely ignored. So now I've reported it.
Well done, Chaz.
I'm not sure if you have anything to say.
I don't have anything.
I have nothing else to say. It's just we should just know.
Yes,
and you can draw your own conclusions and whatever. Okay, that's Scandal Us 1. Scandal Us 2. My favorite, Hunter Ghazi.
Oh yes,
the big Hunter Biden report.
The big reveal.
Okay, so this has been going for a year now. That Ron Johnson in the Foreign Affairs Committee, I think it is,
yes.
In the Senate, has been going for a year on this inquiry. This big sort of Captain Ahab, Moby Dick style hunt, right, for Hunter Biden.
Imagine if Hunter Biden was your white whale.
Now, Ron Johnson, a lot of people have been cynical about this investigation. They suggest it's for political purposes.
Yes.
He denies it entirely.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Although, I feel like he undermined his case somewhat last week.
Wisconsin Republican being shady about something?
Last week, he said, I feel like it's undermined his position somewhat when he said, stay tuned. In about a week, we're going to learn a whole lot more of Vice President Biden's unfitness for office. So I feel like gives away the game a little bit. It might be slightly political. But anyway, it's out. So there've been heaps of conservative hype The Federalist, this is my favourite example, the Federalist article about this
Yes.
literally referred to it as an earth-shattering report.
Earth-shattering.
So
I can see the cracks in the earth now.
While you've got that image in
The
your mind,
Federalist.
Dr. Dave,
Yes.
I'm going to give you, I'm going to shatter your planet with some revelations.
Oh,
I would
please.
like you to give me a Richter scale reading on
Yeah,
some of these revelations from the report, okay? Okay, George Kent, who's basically the star witness in this. Remember from the impeachment?
Yes, yeah,
he was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
He was an honest guy. He had a little bow tie. That's
Yep.
he can tell he's a diplomat.
Yep.
And he was, he was wearing tweed, and he seemed like an honest guy, right?
Yes.
Okay. He said the presence of Hunter Biden on the Burisma board was very awkward for all U.S. officials pushing an anti-corruption agenda in Ukraine. It was awkward.
It was awkward.
Richter scale reading.
9.6.
That's pretty big.
It was like the Anchorage earthquake of, I think it was 1964.
Oh, you haven't left yourself much room.
Killed
to move
200
there.
people.
There are other revelations. You haven't left yourself much room, but that's okay.
That's okay, yeah,
That's okay. Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma when the owner, Zlochevsky, allegedly paid a $7 million bribe to officials serving under Ukraine's prosecutor general. He had nothing to do with it.
Right.
He was just on the board
Yep.
when that bribe was paid.
Yep.
Richter scale reading.
That is the Death Star destroying Alderaan.
Wow. There are
A million souls crying out.
okay.
A great disturbance in the force.
Well, you better start thinking because they're just getting worse and worse.
Yeah, yeah.
Turns out John Kerry lied to a reporter about not knowing that Hunter Biden was on the board of Burisma.
Big bang.
You have nowhere to go. There's like 4 more of those.
Oh, no.
Okay, all right. That's okay. That's okay. You're a creative guy.
Yeah.
Hunter Biden, along with his business partner, quote, engaged in numerous financial transactions with Chinese nationals who had deep connections to the communist Chinese government, which, of course, is everyone in China. What's the Richter scale rating there?
That is big bang to the power of 10.
I'll stop doing this to you because it's
It's going to be exponents from now on.
Okay.
Yeah.
One of the projects they worked on with this Chinese national included a $40 million investment for a natural gas project that fell through.
Oh.
It didn't even happen.
I got to say, all of them so far have kind of been ramping up. That's just the Newcastle earthquake.
and
That's 1989.
And a transaction by James Biden, Joe's brother,
Yep.
using the Chinese credit line was identified for potential financial criminal activity. No, not actual financial criminal
potential.
activity. It was potentially.
Oh, look, these are getting worse. That's just me dropping the bottle of Malibu, really.
Okay, this next one's so up to now this has been whatever, but this one feels a bit more Hunter Biden.
Okay.
Hunter Biden paid for Eastern European prostitutes. He sent thousands of dollars to individuals who have either been involved in transactions consistent with possible human trafficking, 2, an association with the adult entertainment industry, or 3, potential association with prostitution. Okay.
I feel like calling that an earthquake would be like paying a weird compliment to Hunter Biden, which I don't want to.
That's fair. That is fair.
Yeah.
And then the conclusion is that Hunter Biden's position on Burisma's board was problematic and it interfered in the efficient execution of policy.
I love that
with
they're
respect
using
to Ukraine.
the word problematic because that's the word that when liberals use it to describe social problems, conservatives mock it.
Yes.
Like, that's a bit problematic.
What I like about it is that they're focusing on he interfered with maximum efficiency.
Interfered with maximum efficiency.
That's their knock. But also, I
Yeah.
haven't finished a sentence. The extent to which Hunter Biden's role on Burisma's board affected US policy towards Ukraine is not clear.
Oh, not clear.
Having said that, that's been generous because George Kent, their main witness, said flat out it didn't affect Ukraine policy at all. So this is the big bombshell.
Hang on, George Kent was their main witness?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. He was their
Why,
main witness.
why were they using George Kent? They should have known George Kent wasn't going to say anything, wasn't going to give them the bombshells that they want. George Kent was one of the witnesses in the...
I know, that's what I said before. in the impeachment.
Sorry, I must have been
Down.
ignoring you while I was trying to think of
thinking about explosions.
Richter scale.
Yeah. That's fair enough. That's my point.
That's so weird.
That was their main witness because he was an honest guy, and he would tell them.
They shouldn't have got an honest guy. They should have.
The problem was he was the guy. He was the guy who was in charge of that section of the Foreign Affairs Department. So what are they going to do? They couldn't ask anyone else.
George.
It was the bow tie.
I love George Kent. He's just State Department from Central Casting.
And his quote was, "I did not witness any effort by any U.S. official to shield Burisma from scrutiny."
Yeah.
That's his quote in the report, which is this earth-shattering indictment. Because remember, of course, this is all about the fact that they're accusing Joe Biden of trading off aid to protect his son to get the prosecutor sacked. And George Kent's just saying, "Nah, didn't happen."
Look, I got to say, my people, the Wasps, we don't have much to be proud of, but I'm proud of George Kent.
There you go. Next week, I want to see a bow tie. Okay, all right. That's enough of that one. I should mention the Durham report is due any week now.
Oh, the Durham
Talking
report.
about overhyped Trump administration reports.
I'm always amazed by Durham's beard because it actually just doesn't leave any of his mouth at all.
That's a good call. I've got my own call. Have you noticed that this man who's been in the public eye for like 30 years has like one photo on Google? How is he that unphotographed? It's extraordinary. Anyway.
Well, the latter could have something to do with the former.
It could. Anyway, the scandal involving him is that one of his top aide, Nora Danny, resigned 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
Quietly, she's like this. Yeah, she's supposed to be this real white hat. So it's supposed to be a sign when she resigns. Right. Something's not quite right here.
Yeah, odd.
We don't know why, but the colleagues, they're always flapping their gums, those colleagues.
Yeah,
they say it's at least partly, a bit of weasel word there, out of concern that the investigative team has been pressured by Bill Barr for political reasons to produce a report before they're finished. Now, normally...
Who would have imagined?
Yeah, normally I'd be very sceptical about all this anonymous partly rubbish.
Yeah.
But it's the most obvious thing in the world that they're saying.
Incredibly obvious.
So I'm sure it's true.
Well, if their revelations are as shattering as Hunter Biden's revelations... I did see something really scandalous today, though.
Yeah, what was that?
Apparently, the Steele dossier was based on information got from foreign intelligence operatives.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Which was the whole point of the Steele dossier.
That's amazing.
Yes.
How about that? I'm going to put that in scandalous next week.
Yeah.
I should say that the funny thing about that Nora Danny thing is that I was actually going to joke about this on the show, and then it turned into reality. That as soon as she resigned, Kamala Harris...
Hate it when my jokes turn into reality.
Kamala Harris put out a statement with a few other Democrats demanding an investigation into the investigation of the investigation. That's true. They actually have done
Investigation of the investigation.
Of the investigation. Like, that is peak 2020, I feel. The investigation into the investigation of the investigation.
The never-ending story.
Anyway, to be fair, I should say on the
Let's get on our big white dog thing and ride off into the clouds.
Oh, man. I used to love that movie when I was 7. Yeah. On this Durham thing, though,
watch it in between hearings.
I should say, to be fair, as a 7-year-old,
yeah.
To be fair, around Contra hearings, yeah. To be fair, I should note that the DOJ did reveal more than 20 instances of the Mueller team wiping their phones and devices, which was...
So what do you make of that, Chaz?
Either by accidentally wiping them, incorrectly entering passwords too many times, leaving devices in airplane mode with either incorrect or no passwords provided. I'll tell you what I make of it. I reckon they're all like Mueller. They're all 95 years old.
Yeah, that's...
They can't use their phones. If they're anything like him, it makes perfect sense.
That is what I'm going to assume. Yes.
Okay.
Accidental blurry photos.
Exactly. Just asking their great-grandchildren, how do you turn it on?
Yeah.
It's not working. Okay. How do you internet? Okay, Dave, let's talk topical scandalous. Peaceful transfer gate.
Right.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'd say this is well beyond scandal. Right. Okay. So, we've been worried for a long time about the possibility that Trump could lose and not accept that he's lost. This is something Biden has actually talked about quite a bit. But prior to this point, a lot of the discussion of that has been in these sort of fairly fanciful ways about what he's just going to stay in the Oval Office. This is what Biden said. Well, the military will drag him out. And someone had the ridiculous idea today of asking, like, Aaron Sorkin, how would you write election night? Well, it turns out as badly as he would write anything else that he's ever written. He said, oh, yeah, well, I would have it with Trump not accepting the outcome, but then his Republican enablers for the first time march up to the White House and say, Donald, it's time to go.
I want to hear Jeff Daniels.
That was widely described on the internet as unmockable, so I'm not going to try. But this week, a lot more serious attention was given to processes by which this could actually happen because of an article in The Atlantic by
Andrew Grinnell.
No, I don't think it's Grinnell.
No, it's
Gelbach?
Andrew. Hang on.
Yeah, okay. Hand of God is onto it. But anyway, a very, very long article that took us, what is good about this article, and we're going to put it in the homework, is it just breaks down in so much detail every possible part of what could happen. And it's important to emphasize how much uncertainty there is involved. But he points out there is one thing that is absolutely certain, which is Trump will not concede, right? And he says, the concession is this kind of ritual that's been around for a bit more than 100 years, beginning with William Jennings Bryan, the 3-time Democratic Party loser. So it's kind of appropriate that he would have been the one that innovated the ultimate way of losing, which is to concede. Now, he's absolutely right. Who is the author?
Barton Gellman.
Gelman.
Barton Gellman. Okay. Barton Gellman.
It's a good American name.
We were both wrong.
Gell.
Yeah. But he, so it starts off by pointing out, look, he is just not going to concede. Okay, so what happens next? And the main sources for this article were anonymous. They were members of Trump's legal staff.
But they were quite forthcoming.
They were very forthcoming, and they didn't sound like lawyers. They honestly sounded like 25-year-old shit posters.
They sound like Sam Nunberg.
Yeah. And, okay, so a few of the possibilities that are being talked about. One is this idea of Trump basically demanding that any result that is on election night is the result, and then the lawsuits immediately mount after that. And that seemed to become very clear this week that this is a definite possibility that it will happen. You had a Trump ally, Rick Scott, in Florida, introducing legislation, which will never pass, but just the intent was the point, saying any ballot not counted within 24 hours of the election gets extinguished, essentially. Now, that law will never happen, but this gives you an idea of what the mindset is. And basically what this legal advisor said was, well, Democrats think they can maximize their numbers through the postal vote. Well, there's going to be pushback against that. He basically said trying to maximize your vote by getting people to vote safely in a pandemic and ensuring every vote is counted is an act of aggression, and it will be legitimate retaliation to essentially mount lawsuits against it. Now, Trump has already made it very clear what the grounds of those lawsuits are going to be. It's bullshit, but the point is getting the lawsuits, dragging out the process as long as possible, buying as much time as possible.
And reminder to the people who listen to the Wednesday podcast, every swing state is in a Republican-controlled circuit for the Court of Appeals, apart from Arizona and Nevada.
Yes, and all of them also have Republican-controlled legislatures in both houses, even if they've got Democratic governors or Democratic secretaries of state. It's a bit different in each state exactly where the power lies. Okay, so that's one component of this. A second component of this is that we can expect major election day disruption and violence. So this is the first election that will take place since 1981 without the protection of the Supreme Court decision that had required Republicans to actually get approval for any election day operation that involved mass recruitment and use of poll watchers. So in some states, it is completely legal to challenge people at the polls. The point is not necessarily that you will be able to stop them from voting. The point is to make the lines as long as possible. You go to heavily Democratic areas, i.e. cities, areas with lots of voters of colour. You just try to make the lines as long as possible.
And to give them extra disincentive to drop out of the line as well. Like
Yes.
they know at the end of their line,
Yeah.
they're going to deal with a guy in khakis carrying a AR-15.
Exactly, yeah.
And just,
Now, the reason why the Supreme Court, well, it didn't exactly outlaw this practice, but in 1981, they said if you're going to mount these operations, you need prior approval, is because in New Jersey, it was using law enforcement or ex-law enforcement officials, which Republicans have said they're going to do the same thing again. People had no idea, are these actual law enforcement officials? It was just a mass intimidation exercise. That is going to happen again. And in places like Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Minnesota, you know, there are places where the Democratic vote is very heavily concentrated, and that will definitely be targeted by, well, militia would probably be too much of a glorified term to use guys to describe guys who have no actual military training of any kind, but have bought an $80,000 truck and a lot of very expensive accessories and are organised on Facebook and are actively hostile to principles of handling weapons safely. But that can be a pretty intimidating kind of spectacle. So there's going to be that. In Oregon this week, there were these leaked chats among far-right groups talking about ways that they were planning to monitor election drop boxes and things like that. Trump put out a call for 50,000 Trump election monitors, Trump poll monitors. So this sort of stuff is going to happen as well. So in other words, if you want to overcome the problem of Trump launching lawsuits against mail ballots by saying, okay, I'll vote in person, a lot of people are then going to encounter this kind of intimidation at the polls. That doesn't mean you can't be ready for it, but this is another element of that whole picture. Okay, so all of this probably will happen. Then, if there is such a clear Biden win on election night,
if he's ahead by 7 or 8 points.
Yeah, the key thing is, will Trump's Republican allies flee? They're certainly not going to march to the White House to say, Donald, you're out of here. But you know, will they just say, you know, we've lost this?
Flee. You're talking about like some third world government
scurrying.
Lindsey Graham scurries away.
Yeah. Anyway, but then we start to get into the more kind of extreme scenarios. And that is what we were talking about earlier in the show, which is the Constitution doesn't actually say this has to be decided by, you know, a mass democratic vote. It's the states appoint electors by whatever means they see fit. So then do you get the possibility that Trump actually persuades state legislatures to appoint rival slates of electors? Because what you would almost certainly have, especially in states that have a Democratic governor but a Republican legislature, you'd actually get rival slates of electors. And remember, part of the whole point of this is they're not going to win every legal fight they start. They might not even win most of them. The point is to drag the fight out for as long as possible until you get to a scenario where it's going to be decided by a Republican majority congressional vote. Because when if it's left to Congress to decide, it's not the majority of Congress as we understand it. Instead, every state delegation gets a vote, which would make it Republican majority. This is also where the Supreme Court comes into the picture, because what Trump is relying on is that lawsuits would go all the way to the Supreme Court and that the new Supreme Court justice that he's appointed would do her duty by him. It's very interesting, the language that he's used, because he says, you know, we need a judge by the time of the election because a 4-4 Supreme Court wouldn't be any good given the scam the Democrats are going to pull with the mail ballots. What does that reveal? Roberts is not going to go along with this shit,
Yes, that's
right?
right.
Trump does not trust Roberts, so he wants someone in there who's more pliable. So Trump has also said, because he's been asked repeatedly now, like, will you accept a peaceful transfer of power? He refused to commit to that. He was then asked about. He was asked again about accepting a peaceful transfer of power, and he said, "Well, yes, if they stop the mail ballots, and if you stop the mail ballots, then there won't be a transfer of power. It'll be a continuation." So, basically, no. It'll only be peaceful if it's continuation of power. Then he was asked again today about it, and he said, I'll accept it if the Supreme Court says that. Now, just a reminder, most elections are not decided by the Supreme Court. 2000 is the only one in recent memory that was, and that not coincidentally was one where the Republicans lost the popular vote and where there was a substantial sort of margin of chicanery involved. But anyway, this is what he's expecting. Like, he does not go unless it goes all the way to the Supreme Court. And then there have been his Republican allies weighing in. I feel the media should have pushed them harder than what they did. Now, some people are reading some fairly ominous things into things that his allies have said. So Mitch McConnell said the November 3rd election will result in a peaceful transfer of power, as has every election since 1792. A lot of people have been reading into his term November 3rd election. Is he buying into this Trump stuff about the election has to be decided on the night of November 3rd?
I don't think he is.
I don't necessarily
That's
think
not McConnell style.
Is either. Pence said, we're going to accept the results of a free and fair election, which gives him room to say, well, this election wasn't free and fair. And of course, just a reminder that there is no evidence that there is going to be anything wrong with this election. There's no evidence that things have been systematically wrong with previous elections. Like, the US has a lot of problems in the conduct of its elections, but systematic corruption isn't one of them. The integrity of the election is not at issue. Ruth Greenwood, who's an election lawyer, Australian election lawyer, but one of the key figure in election law in the US, she pointed out earlier this week, every year there are things that go wrong in elections. Like, you do get a bunch of ballots will be found in someone's car somewhere, but usually these are honest fuck-ups. And even if there is something bigger going on, it's generally not something big enough to affect the election and the outcome, not something that amounts to systematic interference. And in terms of the overall vote, is like a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percentage.
Like I always say when we have these conversations,
Yeah.
the amount in a high male percentage election, the number of rejected ballots are going to dwarf anything else we're talking about. I mean, already in North Carolina, just this week,
Yes.
they had mailed in 13,747 ballots at the beginning of the week.
Yeah.
Right? So black voters had mailed in 13,747 ballots. 642 were rejected, 4.7%.
Yes.
White voters had cast 60,000 mail-in ballots with 681, or 1.1% rejected.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that there's systematic racism here. What often happens is people who are first-time male voters screw up.
Yeah.
And white voters tend to do more mail-in ballots than black voters in the past.
Yes.
But the point I'm making is they're numbers we're dealing with.
Yeah.
1%, 4%.
Yeah.
It's probably going to end up being 2 or 3% rejected ballots out of 130 million.
Yes.
That's like 3.5, 4 million votes rejected.
Yeah.
That's going to dwarf any
Absolutely.
votes in cars.
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, all of this raises the question of, how serious, like how terrified should we be about this? Or how worried? And, okay, we've known for a long time Trump has zero respect for democratic values or democratic government. He doesn't. So that was never an issue. The question is, would he have the support of other Republicans in this? And to me, that is an open question. And there's another issue, which is, so Biden has made it very clear he doesn't really seem to want to amplify this. So when he was asked about it, he said, it's just so crazy, not worth commenting on. Pelosi said he's not worth it.
Yeah, I think that's a smart move because the media will amplify it without them.
Yes.
And I think someone needs to try to calm things down.
Yeah, well, there also is a danger. I mean, it's been speculated. There's a lot of research that's established if you think your side's going to lose, that's a demotivating factor to vote. I'm not sure if that's ever really been studied in regards to if you think the election is going to be stolen. Maybe there has been research. Maybe I just need to look further.
The Republicans
into
think it's going to be stolen as well. Everyone thinks it's going to be stolen.
Yeah.
You look at the polls; it's like 75% think it's rigged.
Yeah,
it's ridiculous.
Yeah,
but
anyway, so there was, I'm not sure. I think there is a certain chance that there is going to be, at the very least, a major constitutional crisis. I think there's a high chance of violence. Like how widespread, how much it is, I don't know, but I think that there is a very high chance of violence. I don't know if there's a high chance that Joe Biden will actually win the election and not get to take office. So I think that's a very low probability. But, a 1% probability of that? Well, if you're an engineer and you know that there's a 1% probability of the bridge falling down, you're pretty worried.
Yeah, that's fair. Fair. Okay, I'm going to add a few things to this. The first thing is, like I said on the show, I want as many people to hear this as possible. So I'm putting this on both our TV show, on the Friday show, and on this podcast.
Chaz wants you to know.
I think I'm taking a stab what the lawsuit is going to be, the big lawsuit.
Yeah, what is it?
And that it's going to be based in Pennsylvania, which I've long thought is going to be the Florida of this election.
Yes.
And it's based on what happened this week. A judge ruled that ballots.
Is this naked ballots?
No, it's not naked ballots.
Yep.
A lot of people saying naked. I don't think it's naked ballots. What I think it is.
Wow, this really is a twist.
Yeah, what I think it is that ballots are now allowed to be received for 3 days after the election, as long as they're postmarked before the election.
Mm-hmm.
That's not it. What it is that ballots received within that period,
yes,
3 days, that lack a postmark or proof of mailing, or for which the postmark or other proof
Is it proof of mailing that they arrived in the mail?
They could have just been dropped in a box. Yeah. Or other proof of mailing is illegible, will be presumed to be being mailed by election day. So if it doesn't have a postmark, is they going to assume it was mailed before election day, even if it arrives 3 days later.
Right.
That, to me, has lawsuit written all
By the way,
over it.
for context, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court is Democratic.
It is.
Dominated or liberal leaning. And they have been, nearly every week, there's been a new judgment that has basically expanded the scope of mail-in voting.
And that, to me, is screaming at lawsuit.
Screaming.
Like
sue me.
Pennsylvania is likely to be an extremely tight result, which is going to take days and days and days to come through. That has lawsuit written all over it. They're in a conservative circuit of appeals.
Yes.
I reckon that is the lawsuit that could be.
There you go.
The
Chaz has called it.
We'll
I don't know if there's a betting market on this.
on what the lawsuit's going to be.
I don't know if you can walk into the TAB tomorrow morning and chuck some cash on.
Anyway, I want to say 4 things that might calm things down a little bit.
Yes.
Maybe. Although, to be honest, they just bring us to your 1%, which was a great point.
Yeah.
The 1% bridge fall down point. Okay. First of all, my experience of America is that, having been there for 3 weeks combined in my life, is that when you get these kinds of scenarios where people are going, oh my God, they're doing this, and they're doing this, and they're doing this, Americans get very ornery, and there's always a backlash. And if there are guys with guns and guys in khakis and all that kind of stuff, you can guarantee that line is going to get 3 times as long.
Yes.
Because that's the way they react.
Absolutely. And I would add to that, beginning with the women's marches immediately after Trump's election win, we had just the entire presidency has brought people out onto this onto the streets against him.
Yeah.
The Black Lives Matter marches were the biggest protests since the 1960s, possibly bigger than the 1960s. We've already seen, no matter how good the economy was for 3 years, his approval rating wouldn't move above about 43%. I think the media has actually systematically underestimated how much Trump is hated and how much actual anger how much majoritarian anger there is about that. And I think that's because the 2016 election broke people's brains a bit.
Yeah.
The media was like, oh my God, we don't understand real America, forgetting the fact that actually Hillary Clinton had got 2.8 million more votes. And I think they have systematically underestimated the majoritarian anger, which was very visible in the 2018 election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Second thing I think they're underestimating is they're underestimating how much Gorsuch and Kavanaugh are not hacks.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of assuming, Gorsuch and Kavanaugh, they'll go with Trump. But I've been watching them for the last 6 months. They both come up with some pretty freaky rulings. Like, they are not predictable.
Yeah.
And I think that I would be surprised. I mean, this might be famous last words. I will swallow it potentially in 3 months, but I would be surprised. I would be astonished if both of them go along with a massive, dubious lawsuit of zero merit. I just don't think they will.
And so, I mean, Kavanaugh in particular has a reputation for he is the establishment man. He is the ultimate sort of, legal academic. Precedent really matters to him. He's been socialized into the absolute norms of
He's
the...
Roberts Jr.
Yeah. Norms of the establishment. Gorsuch we've seen as a maverick, but a maverick in really unpredictable ways.
Yes.
So, yes, I think you're absolutely right.
Another thing which I think people are forgetting is the way TV coverage works, which is they're assuming that
you should listen to Chaz about TV, by the way. Maybe not about the content of your political ads, but definitely about TV.
Sure. People are assuming the way these guys are going to roll is they're going to say on the night, well, here are the early votes, the in-person votes, but hey, we don't have any mail-in votes, so we can't say anything yet. Gosh darn it, come back in a week. But no, they're going to project from the moment they get 5 or 10% of the mail-in vote. They're going to start projecting.
Yep.
And they're not going to call it,
No.
but they're going to have projections of likely wins.
Yes.
For sure.
Yep.
If not on the night, at least on day 1 or day 2.
Yes.
Trump is not going to be able to spend a week going, what's going on? Wrap it up.
Yeah, and I mean,
Because they're going to have maps there. They're going to have maps there on the night or maybe the night after saying this is what's likely to happen based on the votes so far.
Absolutely. And I mean, especially, the point has constantly been made. Trump's ultimate aim in all of this is just to sow absolute confusion about who has actually won and who's actually lost. And I think people have overestimated his ability to do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the fourth thing I'd say is you raised a great question, which is how much after-election support can you expect from other Republicans? And I would say that up to now, like we know, I shouldn't say for a fact, we strongly suspect that most of the Republican politicians have zero time for Trump. Right, but that they
on a personal level,
on a personal level, but they just feel like they've got to go along with him because he's their meal ticket, and if they go against him, their people will go against them. Right after the election, if Trump looks like he could be on his way out, there is zero incentive for them to go with him because if Biden comes along, it's a new game. It's complete. It doesn't matter how angry their people are if Trump loses because it's a new game as soon as Biden starts. They've got another year or two to build up, to rebuild, whatever. People aren't going to be going back and saying, you weren't very good on the day after the election. But no, they're not going to do that. And so if ever there's a time where they're going to kick him up the ass, it'll be then. That you can expect some serious treachery, I feel. At that
serious
moment.
treachery. Chaz is coming out with some great predictions today.
So that's the reason why I feel it is.
Red wedding.
Yeah. If Biden wins the election legitimately, I don't think Trump's going to be able to stop it.
Okay.
But, you're right about the 1%. I'd prefer to have
it might not be as high as 1%, but
it's still there. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Let's go into polling.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bit of a crazy week in the polls.
Yeah. Do you want
as
to
we
start?
said. Okay, so this week, Trump actually had, I would say, his single best poll of the entire election.
Was it from Rasmussen?
Cycle. No, it was not from Rasmussen.
Okay.
No, it's not from Rasmussen or from your friend.
Trafalgar.
Yeah. No, it was the ABC Washington Post poll in Florida that had him up with a likely voter screen that had him up by 4 in Florida, which was very, very different from previous polls that we've seen in Florida, which either had Biden slightly ahead or a dead heat. The registered voters screen had Biden up by 1. So that was 700 and something. And then the likely voter screen took it down to 600 and something and has Trump up by 4. Now, that is consistent with what we've previously seen in Florida, where it's one of the states where the likely voter screen is actually eroding Biden's vote. Yep. In the Midwestern states, when the likely voter screen is put on, that actually increases Biden's vote. Now, Florida, as we've discussed before, Biden seems to have some real disadvantages there with Latino voters. I mean, he's not strong with Latino voters anyway. It really does seem that his major gains have been made with white voters, relatively weak with Latino voters. And the Republicans are definitely pushing on this every way that they can. There were new sanctions against Cuba announced today. It's entirely possible a Cuban-American judge will be appointed to the Supreme Court. So, they are just going to push on this every possible way. Nonetheless, there were also polls from Florida this week showing Biden ahead, albeit not polls of that quality. But yeah, basically, I would say Florida's a toss-up, complete toss-up at the moment, because when you look at all those polls together, they're all actually within a fairly narrow range, ranging basically from Biden up by 3 to Trump up by... It just looks like what you would expect statistically from a race which is basically tied. So Florida will continue to be very close. That same poll was also done in Arizona that put Trump up by 1, which might have been comforting because that's the first poll in Arizona in months that would have shown him ahead. Yep. But that is really a bit of an outlier, that poll. Meanwhile, most of the rest of the state... Oh, there was one other good poll for Trump, which showed him up by 5 in Texas. Okay. But the fact that we're talking about, good poll for Trump showed him up by 5 in Texas shows how dire his condition is in the race. Most of the other polls this week were very good for Biden. So there were several polls out of Pennsylvania that were good news for him, including one today from Franklin and Marshall that had him up by 7. There was another poll, I can't remember which one, from Pennsylvania that had him up by 6. Really worrying for Trump, though, would be the polls that show Biden ahead in Ohio and Iowa. So Ohio, now the average, according to both Real Clear Politics and 538, puts Biden ahead. That is extremely worrying for Trump because Florida's irrelevant if Biden wins Ohio. Yeah. And also that particular shift in Ohio, that shows that shift of white voters back to Biden, that suggests that it's real. Yeah. And that it's not just to do with quirks of the upper Midwest. That's a real shift back to Biden. Polls, Iowa, the average still shows Trump slightly in front, but not by very much. Polls increasingly showing Joni Ernst in trouble in the Senate race there. So basically the whole Midwest, not just the upper Midwest, the whole Midwest appears to be moving in Biden's favor. I don't think I really saw a poll this week from the Midwest that was moving. I think there might have been one Pennsylvania poll that showed it a bit closer, but really they all seem to be moving in Biden's favor, even as the hopes of the gains in the South and Southwest seem to be waning a little bit.
I was just going to say that my sort of batting order from Biden's perspective in terms of how he can win it is the easiest way to win it is Ohio or Florida. Either of them, he's pissed it in, right?
Yes.
Assuming he doesn't get either of them, which I am assuming for now, but we'll see.
Yeah.
The next easiest is Pennsylvania. If he gets Pennsylvania, it's probably a comfortable win.
Probably.
Yeah, but it's not guaranteed, but it's probably a comfortable win. If he doesn't get Pennsylvania, then it's down to Arizona, and then it's a tight win.
Yeah.
Right there, and it's a very tight win.
In fact, that's a 269 to 269
type
split
scenario. Yeah, because then you got Maine 2 coming into it, Nebraska 2, and etc. Yes, it's going to be either a tie or a 1 vote or a 2 vote kind of scenario. Yes. If he doesn't get Arizona, then he's screwed. It's like as in if he doesn't get Ohio, Florida, Pennsylvania, or Arizona, then he's in trouble.
Unless he, yeah.
I mean, he can still do it.
He would need North Carolina.
Yeah, which is going to be tougher than some of them. So,
yeah.
So it's not impossible, but just in terms of the likely batting order, that's basically where I'm going.
Yeah.
Those 4 states. Okay, so I just want to add something on an interesting poll, which didn't get a lot of attention, which is from the Harvard Kennedy School Institute of Politics, where they poll kids.
Yes,
18
I
to
saw
29s.
this.
Yeah.
I paid attention.
Oh,
they polled 4,000 of them.
Yes, it was a big one. And
Yes.
Biden was leading Trump by 60 to 27 amongst likely voters. Now, Clinton at this point in time was getting 49%.
Yeah.
All right. So, but that's not the most important bit. The most important bit is that 63% of respondents said they will definitely be voting.
Ooh.
In 2016, it was 47% said they'd be definitely voting. That is Obama levels, saying they're definitely
That
voting.
is.
And those
For a candidate who they don't even like.
Nah, exactly. So those people who are worried about the kids turning up, looks like the kids are turning up. And by the way, Obama got basically the highest turnout amongst kids ever.
I was thinking as I read that, like, okay, if that
At least till the early 80s. Sorry, at least till the early 80s.
If that happens, do you think that the geriatric donors to outfits like Turning Point USA, you know, to people like Charlie Kirk, they're going to say, we might have wasted our money a bit here?
Yeah, probably, but you know.
But then again, maybe they won't, because the point isn't to persuade young people. The point is to raise the next generation of sociopaths.
Well, also, I mean, how long they've been giving money to James O'Keefe? They don't mind pissing money down a well.
Yeah, but no, I do maintain though. So yeah, James O'Keefe, he genuinely changed the entire political culture of conservatism. I reckon if it wasn't for James O'Keefe, like James O'Keefe created the entire culture of viral video as politics. I actually reckon the long-term damage that he's done to the Republican Party, we might have discussed this before, is I think your politically talented young Republicans are ending up in let's make viral video world rather than let's run for office.
Yeah, well, Laura Loomer.
Yeah.
Although she's now doing
wouldn't
both.
necessarily say she was the most talented example of what I was talking about.
Talented is a key
But yeah,
word,
no.
yes,
So you
sure
are right. I mean, I think O'Keefe has been quite successful on one level in moulding the whole culture around him, but he has, on the other hand, been a potential catastrophe for the Republicans in the long term.
We barely need a Skeptics Corner because you've already talked about some pro-Trump polls there, but I'm going to throw one in anyway.
Yes.
Because there was an interesting poll this week from Skeptics Corner in a slightly different way to usual. Okay, Morning Consult. They did a bit of a classic kind of.
This is a daily tracking poll, by the way. Yes.
They did a classic kind of shy Trumper lookout kind of poll where they split it up into phone polls and online polls. Theory being shy Trumpers, if they're shy to talk to someone and come out to talk to someone, then they will be more likely to fill out the online poll pro-Trump rather than speaking to a person and saying they're pro-Trump. Okay, so they tried it out and they found, with a big sample size, they found 56-44 on the phone to Biden, 55-45 to Biden online. So, I mean, that is a 1 point difference, but it's not much of a difference, right? Okay, but here's the interesting bit. There weren't shy Trumpers when it came to the election. But what there were shy voters for were for cultural issues like discrimination.
Oh, that's hardly a new finding.
Well, but I'll just read you the numbers. I'll just read you the numbers. Would you say there is discrimination against gays and lesbians? Phone, 79%. Online, 72%. Black people, phone, 82%. Online, 73%. Hispanics, phone, 74%. Online, 67%. Christians, phone, 40%. Online, 42%. Went the other way.
Yep.
Muslims, phone 83%, online 74%. And here's the interesting one. Jews, phone 83%, online 64%. 20 points difference. So there are a whole bunch of people out there who feel compelled to mouth
Chaz, this is known as
platitudes.
social desirability bias.
Yes.
Okay, so this is something potentially worth looking up. It's been understood as a problem in survey research for a long time, and particularly understood as a problem in issues around race, right? So the way that people used to ask questions about race was with the kind of very blunt questions that you were talking about from the 1960s, which were basically asking about biological inferiority or using feeling thermometer questions. How warm do you feel towards this group? And those, answers on those kinds of questions, that has dropped absolutely precipitously in terms of expressed prejudice against African Americans. That no doubt does reflect genuine change in opinion, but it probably also reflects changes in discourse. So researchers realise that you actually have to devise other ways of getting at people's true feelings about controversial issues. So you have to ask questions in ways that aren't going to trigger that social desirability bias. So there was a whole new battery of questions developed known as the racial resentment battery, which were asking in much more sophisticated ways. So questions like, Jews, Italians, and the Irish all pulled themselves up by the bootstraps. Shouldn't black people do the same? Or asking questions about welfare, essentially. So it was embedding things in a social context that made it more socially acceptable than saying, I think black people are inferior. Yeah. But any battery of questions that you can ask eventually develops its own social desirability bias problem. So now the sort of cutting edge of doing it is various experimental procedures for trying to get at prejudice. And one way that in-group bias is measured now, which is absolutely fascinating, is by procedures where you're basically tricking people into what the real purpose of the online survey is. So, for example, there was one study done about a decade ago where people were told, okay, we're going to see whether these Chinese characters, Chinese letters, pictographs that we're going to show you, whether these elicit good or bad feelings. They eliminated any Chinese speakers from the sample, so that what people were looking at was to them purely abstract figures. And they asked, and then they said, you're looking at this screen, they're like, okay, one's about to come up, so here's a 5-second warning. And in the 5-second warning, they would show someone's face, which would either be white or black. And then, people would give their response, does this particular Chinese character look good or bad to you? What they found, unsurprisingly, was white people were far more likely to say they like the look of this Chinese character that appears after a white face. Black people far more likely to say they like this character that appears after a. So that was a neat experimental way of looking at the particular phenomenon of in-group bias, which is there's a distinction between that and racism outright, but because racism is socially embedded in all kinds of other structures of power, but that got at in-group bias very nicely. I think that was called the attribute something procedure, AMP. If I can be bothered, I'll actually look it up. AMP. Anyway, sorry, we've just gone on a long digression about
it was interesting.
Measuring prejudice, but yeah, social desirability bias.
I'll guess back on the road with a Stats Nugget. What is the last poll thing? This will not surprise you, but just in our depressing state, I had to throw this in. Most Americans, 55%, strongly oppose changing the US Constitution to allow two-term presidents to run for a third presidential term.
Oh, what a surprise.
But Democrats, only 14% of them are open to the change. Republicans, 30% of them are open to the change.
Course.
You might be hearing a bit more about that poll if Trump wins the re-election. Anyway, now, this has been indulgent, but I want to continue Ariel de Mezzo watch.
Okay.
She's my absolute favourite person
All right.
in this election. You remember her?
Yes.
Ariel de Mezzo, the Satanist, transgender, anarchist, non-Republican who won the Republican primary for sheriff in Cheshire County, New Hampshire.
So good.
She told the story this week, and I'm all for her. She said that she did it mostly to be a pest to run, but she was also wondering if she might lure voters into a trap that would prove a point.
Lure them into a trap.
About a problem with our political system that people blindly vote for any candidate on their party's ticket.
Oh, an experiment.
Quote, I ran unopposed, but if people were paying attention, I should have gotten 25 votes and lost to a write-in candidate, she said. This is the consequence of your actions. I gave you the rope and you hung yourself. 4,000 people put me into the highest law enforcement position in the county without knowing a thing about me, and that is ultimately an argument for anarchism.
That's amazing.
She is an anarchist, and now she's won the nomination. She insists that she's actually going to campaign seriously for the job. She wants the job.
What's her platform?
Well, she hasn't said. Well, she'd say "fuck the police" was her platform in the primary, but now she says what she says is, "I don't expect to win. If I do, I suspect the deputies will quit as soon as I'm sworn in. If not, I'm going to give them 3 options. You can stay at the station and play Xbox. You can go out and police the police, or you can go home."
Wow.
I love Ariel de Mezzo.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah, I mean, she is in New Hampshire, the most libertarian state in the country.
Who knows? Who knows?
New Hampshire has its own version of the Gadsden flag. Did you know this?
I did know this.
Yes.
You tell them.
So the Gadsden flag is the flag you often see at right-wing rallies, a yellow flag with a rattlesnake on it that says, "Don't tread on me." The Gadsden flag is this delightful alternative, which is a porcupine that says, "Don't tread on me."
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
You wanted to talk about QAnon.
Yes, I do,
You don't have to.
unfortunately.
You don't have
Yeah. But I just want to say there was this attempt a few years ago of all these libertarians to move to New Hampshire.
Yes, that's right.
The Free State Project, they called it. Yeah, it turns out libertarians aren't very good at collective action, Chaz.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. It is getting really worrying, speaking of worrying things, the way that QAnon is increasingly creeping into this election campaign. Okay, so I think I mentioned last week when we were talking about Trump's attack on critical race theory, which he clearly has no idea what it is, but he did make sure to throw in the term critical race theory is child abuse in the truest sense of those words. Today, Don Trump Jr. Was tweeting about the Hunter Biden revelations. Hunter Biden got paid $3.5 million.
They were earth-shattering.
Earth-shattering revelations. And he said, are you interested in that, Southern District of New York, as well as all the child abuse? Right, so they are throwing in references wherever they can now to child abuse, child trafficking, all stuff where there's, plausible deniability. Oh, this isn't about QAnon. We're just interested in stopping human trafficking.
Can I give you an example?
Yes.
This is an ad that the NRCC, the National Republican Campaign Committee, are running against Tom Malinowski in New Jersey. Enjoy.
In every city, in every neighborhood, around every corner, sex offenders are living among us. But Tom Malinowski tried to make it easier for predators to hide in the shadows. Malinowski worked as the top lobbyist for a radical group that strongly opposed the National Sex Offender Registry. Law enforcement praised the National Sex Offender Registry that Tom Malinowski led an effort to stop. After 2 decades in Washington, Tom Malinowski's become dangerously radical. NRCC is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Around every corner in every neighborhood, there are sexual predators hiding.
It's this particular sort of vision where the threat to the children is some stranger lurking in the shadows, where the vast majority of time with child abuse, it's not. It's
93% of the time, it's
people,
someone you know.
People who are known.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, Dave Weigel pointed out about that ad, like, it's not an entirely new thing to claim that your opponent is soft on child sexual abuse. That's actually a staple of election campaigns, but it is taking on sinister new dimensions now. And by the way, the National Sex Offender Registry is a disaster in all kinds of respects.
Civil liberties respects.
Yes. I mean, the biggest disaster being the vast majority of people on it were children when they actually committed their crimes. So we are seeing this increasing kind of prominence of this. And it does, I mean, I don't spend a lot of time on Facebook apart from reading the endlessly insightful and witty comments from Peppers.
Yes. Yes, that's true.
That's basically the only time that I spend on Facebook. But it does really worry me about, because that is clearly going to be this year's disinformation campaign. In 2016, it was largely race stuff. I'm pretty sure this year there must just be so much of this stuff getting pumped out about how Trump is fighting this war on pedophiles. And I mean, in one sense, QAnon just involves an incredibly simple political strategy, which is find the one thing that everyone agrees is the absolute worst thing and then accuse your opponents of doing it. I don't know what effect that's going to have on the election. That could get marginal, low information voters. Actually, given that there aren't that many issues left that are going to be available to grab marginal, low information voters, right? That could be one. That could actually be that could actually have an effect on the campaign. Another thing I'm extremely worried about is how many children are currently being told QAnon stories by their parents.
My daughter is. Am I a bad dad? But yeah, my daughter, she's 10. She read the Bob Woodward book in like 3 days.
Yeah.
she's into this kind of stuff.
But I assume you're not telling her that there's a secret network.
Oh, no. Oh, sorry, I see what you mean. I'm telling her about QAnon. That's her favourite kind of comedy.
Right, okay, yes.
Yeah.
I don't think that your daughter is representative of the average American child.
Yes.
B, no, I'm saying what they're going to be hearing about is, yes, there are child sex traffickers lurking around.
Trying to drink your blood.
Every corner,
Yes.
and if Trump isn't there to protect you, what could happen? We're talking about, some pretty serious stuff being inflicted on children's minds.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
As a result of this, and
even more serious than what I tell my
children. I don't know what we're going to see in 5 or 10 years' time. What we're going to hear from children about what they were told during this period by the children, but by their parents. But it's not going to be anything good.
I'm going to save a massive treat for after Dave leaves because we've only got 10 minutes left. Can you stay later or no?
No.
He's always in a rush. He's got so many friends.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this COVID stimulus?
No. I'm gonna get to that.
What?
But this is a big treat. This is a big treat. This is you're gonna miss out.
Okay.
You can watch later on.
Yeah, fine.
But I want us to round out the. I've been waiting to talk about Biden's policies. I'm the only one for like a month.
Why are you in a rush? He's not talking about
that. Is true.
Yeah.
True, but I want to talk about it. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to come back to that. But just on the 2020 before we move on quickly.
Yes.
The Maine Supreme Judicial Court.
Yes.
The Maine Supreme Court has upheld
this is the Supreme Court of the state of Maine, by the way. Not some court called the Maine Court.
No.
Yeah.
Has upheld the use of ranked choice voting in presidential elections and in congressional elections now. And so Maine is fully ranked choice voting. It's Australian style, which is pretty cool.
Welcome to the Commonwealth, Maine.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's nice.
Maine is one of my favourite states, by the way.
Well, now, because of this, it's mine. I want to talk very briefly about TikTok.
Okay.
Because this is the stupidest story. Okay, a few weeks back, the Trump administration, they said there were security concerns about Chinese data storage with TikTok. Fair enough, okay? No problems. Seemed a little odd to me to be worrying about the data of 12-year-old girls dancing to Dua Lipa songs, but fine, whatever. Okay, we'll worry about the data. So they wanted an American company to take over the American operations. Okay, TikTok tried to do a deal with Microsoft, fell through. The Department of Commerce came over the top, issued rules that would basically end TikTok on November 12, I believe. All right, so the clock's ticking. Then last week, the clock is ticking. Yes, the clock is ticking.
Yes.
Then last week, Trump announces he's given his blessing to a deal where Oracle and Amazon buy it together. And there's a condition that TikTok spends $5 billion on Trump's Patriot Education Initiative, the 1776 Commission. Okay, now there's so many issues here. First of all...
Can I just say the overwhelming issue here?
Yes.
Trump's mentor was a mafia lawyer, Roy Cohn. He literally does not understand how non-mafia brokered transactions work.
Yes!
He just doesn't understand it at all.
Give his blessing. That is so mafia.
Yeah.
Like, just reeks of mafia. But secondly, as well, since when does the government order companies to break up and then place conditions on them that has nothing to do with the companies? No. And then they create slush funds that those companies have to pay into.
Yeah.
Like, what the... Honestly,
By the way, he would not be able to find a conservative judge who would go along
of course,
with
it's unconstitutional. But wait,
Yeah.
we don't need to worry about that, as you'll see. Trump's top buddies with Larry Ellison, who's Oracle's chief executive. So it reeks of corruption. Walmart is one of the competitors for Amazon, who Trump hates because he's got it in for Bezos because he owns the Washington Post. So it's so corrupt. And by the way, Walmart clearly haven't put a massive amount of thought into this bid, because let me just put up the press release so you can all see there. You can read it along with me. Dave, I'm going to show you so you can see. It says, this unique technology eliminates the risk of foreign governments spying on American users or trying to influence them with disinformation, the company said. I don't think they really put a lot of time into their press release.
That's that volcano that went off in Iceland.
That's great. Well done.
Yeah.
Call of the day. We're putting that in the title. Well done. Now, those are just the questions at the surface, but then it gets worse, because it turns out Oracle and Walmart are going to create a new company called TikTok Global that they're only going to own 20% of. Right? And the Chinese company ByteDance will have the rest, although they say they're owned by 40% Americans anyway. So I don't know what's going on there. But Oracle promises that the Chinese company is still going to control the TikTok algorithm. What the security is all about, right? Oracle promises the day is going to be secure, but remember they're the guys who work with US spy agencies and have been involved in leak fiascos as well. The $5 billion, it's not going to the 1776 Commission. It's just taxes. It's just Oracle and Walmart said that the new company...
I had no idea how flimsy this was. This is what you learn from PEP.
Yeah, they just said they were going to pay $5 billion in new taxes over the next few years to the Treasury, which they won't anyway because there'll be tax cuts. Yeah. And then separately, they will develop an educational curriculum driven by artificial intelligence to teach children reading, history, and other subjects. So they estimate
patriotically.
So they estimate they're going to pay taxes and then separately fund a completely different educational campaign to Trump's stupid 1776 thing. But he's got himself
TikTok
completely
already
confused.
is an educational campaign.
And then finally, the editor of the Global Times, a Chinese state-owned tabloid, they said that Beijing's going to reject the TikTok deal anyway because the agreement would endanger China's national security, interests, and dignity.
Yeah, I was wondering about this. It didn't seem like something China would particularly want to go along with.
There is nothing to this on every possible level. Is the most moronic piece of policy. So So anyway, that's TikTok.
Yes. Well, have I mentioned one of my favorite articles written about the entire Trump period, which was in the Washington Post a few weeks ago? It's by Paul Musgrave, who's a friend of mine. He's a professor at University of Massachusetts Amherst.
What's it called? This is homework.
It is called, I can't remember the exact title, but it is Trump's Superpower is Wasting Other People's Time.
Okay, yep, gotcha.
And very much building on Elizabeth Cohen's theories about the political value of time. Yeah, just pointing out that he does shit like this just all the time that prompts thousands, millions of hours to be wasted as people go scrambling looking for legal solutions to problems that he creates. And it doesn't take him any time at all to just throw this stuff out there. And I mean, in the same way as a businessman, his major talent was just tying up other people in court forever, having bottomless legal resources to fund it. This is just like a hypercharged version of that, where the bottomless legal resources are the resources of the United States of America. Anyway, I highly recommend there's that article in terms of just really getting at power dynamics.
Okay, I'm going to leave you with a stats nugget.
Yes.
And then you can go.
Then I'm
going to tell people about COVID stimulus.
Excellent.
I am going to get it in. I've been trying to get it for like 6 weeks.
Yes.
And then I'm going to give you guys a reward, a little treat at the end.
Reward.
All right, so the stats nugget. Are you ready? Stats nugget, yeah.
So are we actually putting music into
Yeah, we
Oh,
are.
right, okay, yeah.
These guys don't know. We put in afterwards.
Oh, that
That's
explains
why-
some of the comments.
That's why Dave always looks so confused and sullen when we're
Oh,
playing it.
okay. Sorry, I get what's going on now. So I'm not going to get into the jingle, by the way, but okay. At least I understand what is supposedly happening.
That's what's going on.
Now, okay, right.
It's the fear of the mind.
Okay, yeah.
Okay. It's about COVID. And we didn't even mention COVID. I have heaps of stuff, another podcast, but I'm going to give you the stats nugget now.
Yes.
We remember how the talking point of a couple of weeks ago was it's all the blue states' fault?
Yes.
Take out the blue states, we're doing really well.
Yeah.
Okay. This is from yesterday, so it might have changed today, but close enough.
Yep.
The top 11 states for cases overall
Yes.
per capita are red states.
Right.
The top
wow.
11, okay? New York is
Jesus.
12th.
Yes.
Okay, but here's the best one. Take a guess how many states at the top are red for the new cases in the last 7 days per capita. Okay, so ranking new cases in the last 7 days per capita, how many in a row at the top are red states?
7?
17.
Wow.
The top 17 states for new cases in the last week per capita are red states. That is a stats
That
nugget.
is certainly a stats nugget. No, I'm not going to get into this even though
Okay.
I know what's going on. Anyway, that's it for me, Peppers. Have a good weekend.
next week.
I hope that we're not waking up to news tomorrow on the kind of magnitude
God.
that we had last Saturday.
I'm going to try and get a Wednesday podcast for the debate if I can. If I can find someone, we'll see. We'll see. I no promises.
It's not going to be me because
not gonna
I
be
can't
him.
even bring myself to watch debates.
Okay. I'll see you next Friday.
See ya.
Now, you guys, I'm going to tell you, hey, hand the guide, in you get. Come on. I'm going to tell you guys about, they miss you, hand the guide. It's been a long time. Yep. I'm going to tell you guys about COVID stimulus, okay? Because it's been going for a while and we haven't talked about it. I really want to, and then you get your reward. Okay. So hang with me. All right. See you, Dave. All right. COVID stimulus. First of all, what exists from the COVID? Because originally there was this stimulus passed from Congress, and it ran out way back in August, July, something like that. And then Trump came in over the top and said, I'm going to help out with my executive order. Okay, so what exists, what doesn't exist, what's going on? Okay, for a start, something that never ran out was what they call the pandemic unemployment assistance. That is not the extra $600 a week, but it is the unemployment assistance that goes to people who don't normally get unemployment assistance. I'm talking about, say, contractors or small business people, that kind of thing. They don't normally get, you need to have an employer, you need to have insurance, you need to be employed for a certain amount of time and work for a certain number of hours before you can get normal unemployment benefits. Pandemic unemployment assistance offers unemployment assistance to people who don't qualify normally. That's still going. Okay, so those people have been helped, but no one's getting the extra $600 a week.
How much is that?
To be honest, I don't know. I was looking up to try and find if it was exactly the same as normal unemployment assistance or not. It's from the feds, so I'm not sure that it would be exactly the same as in the state, but it's not much.
Yeah.
It's not much. It's definitely not like $600 a week. Okay. So the extra $600 a week is on, but that is still going. Then you got Trump's lost wages program, which that's the extra $300 a week that Trump suggested in his executive order, as long as the states put in $100 themselves. If the states are not giving $100 to a person, they are not eligible for the $300. Okay. And that affects about 6% of the people collecting unemployment insurance who are getting less than $100 a week in unemployment insurance, so they can't get the $300. Okay, so that's about 912,000 people as of August 1st. Okay, the Trump program was actually very popular. 55% of people approved of Trump's executive orders. Even 33% of Biden supporters approved. So that was quite popular. The problem is he only had a certain amount of funding to use, and it was all disaster relief funding. He had $44 billion of FEMA disaster relief funding, which at the time when he said that, I said, the problem with this is we're in a peak hurricane season at the moment. And if the big hurricane comes, they're screwed because there'll be no disaster relief money left over. So far, they're lucky. All the hurricanes have been smallish hurricanes. Or there have been some big ones, but no mega hurricanes.
Yeah.
It's not over yet. So if it comes through in November or October, then get ready for that to be a massive story. Where's all our hurricane relief money gone? Because he's raided that piggy bank for this. The 48 states signed up for it. People were saying, oh, no one's going to sign up for it. Well, they did. 48 states signed up for the program. It took until September for them to start paying it, though, because it was very complicated. By September, they started paying on September 5, only 6 states were paying it. By September 12, there were articles saying it's already starting to run out because all the states came on at once and they were starting to pay in hindsight as well. They could pay in hindsight. So people were just getting a month at a time.
Yeah, right.
Basically. Okay, it's basically now gone. So now what happens? Like it's basically in the last week or two, it's finished up. The Republicans tried to pass, the Democrats tried to pass a massive stimulus bill in the House. The Senate Republicans ignored it. The Senate Republicans tried to pass what they call a skinny stimulus bill, which has more of the $300 a week extra, has funding for the Postal Service, it has $258 billion for small businesses, the small business funding stuff, it has money for coronavirus testing. It has zero for state and local governments, even though they've got a big budget hole there. And that's really important, by the way, the state and local governments, because they pay a lot of people's wages. If they have a big budget hole, they're not allowed to run a deficit. They sack people. So it creates unemployment when they have a hole. And it's got the skinny bill has a stimulus check of $1,200 again. Okay. For people who earn less than $75,000. Okay. That didn't get up. Even Rand Paul voted against that.
Yeah,
Democrats just ignored it. Okay. The sticking points are, briefly, $568 billion hole now in the state and local governments, and the Democrats are desperate to fill that hole. That's for this next financial year, from Q3 this year to Q2 next year. The Democrats want to fill that. Republicans do not. The Democrats annoyingly have the dumbest sticking point, which is they are obsessed with this SALT deduction. Just to explain briefly, in a lot of blue states in particular, they have, because property is so expensive in some of these cities like New York and San Francisco, they allow you to deduct your property taxes for the state from your federal taxes, right? And it's because the property is so expensive, their property taxes are very high, and so that's quite a big tax cut that they take out of you by allowing you to deduct that out of your federal taxes. When they passed the federal tax cut, one of the reforms they did was they said, no, there's going to be a cap. You can only deduct a certain amount. If you live in this mansion, tough titties, you're going to pay lots of tax. Right? You're not going to be able to deduct all of it. Democrats are fighting hard for that. So what they're fighting for is they're fighting for property tax cuts for rich people, essentially. Because the poor people, they can deduct it. It's I've forgotten what the cutoff is, $100,000, $150,000, whatever it is, of the value of the property, whatever it is. It's enough. And so rich people are the ones who are getting hit by this tax hike, and the Democrats are trying to help them get a tax cut because those people live in blue cities, in New York, and LA, and so forth. Okay, and also they're limousine liberals. Let's face it. Okay, so see, as soon as Dave walks out the room, here out comes the libertarian. So, anyway, just the numbers here, by the way. 96% of the benefits of the SALT cap repeal would go to the top 20%. An average tax cut of $2,640. 57% would benefit the top 1%. A tax cut of $33,000.
Jesus.
25% would benefit the top 0.1%. An average tax cut of $145,000. And the remaining 4% of the benefit of removing the cap would go to the middle class, the middle 60%, for an average tax cut of $27.
Right.
So that gives you an example of what I'm talking about here, okay? That's a piece of bullshit from the Democrats that they never get called out on.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Anyway, there's some of the sticking points. Trump has actually, because he's been populist and he's trying to win an election, has implored the Republicans to go big. He tweeted out, Democrats are heartless. They don't want to give stimulus payments to people who desperately need the money and whose fault it was not that the plague came in from China. Go for the much higher numbers, Republicans. It all comes back to the USA anyway, one way or another. So there you go. So he's going for the stimulus, but Republicans ain't listening to him. So that is where we're at. Where this goes, there's just a standoff.
Feels like it's months too late, though.
Yeah.
It's
well,
ridiculous.
Well, like I said, there was that executive order that tided some people over, but that's now gone. So, there are people who are definitely being screwed. But anyway, they've now paid off. They've now pushed off the budget squeeze. Like they've basically kicked the can down the road another couple of months. So the government's been funded. So there's no reason for them to come back other than to vote for a Supreme Court justice. But so they're not going to do anything about it, I'm afraid. And that's where we're at. And it's quite depressing. And that's the reason I had to mention it, because it's actually a bit of a travesty and people are ignoring it because they're moving on to shiny objects. Yeah. And I didn't want to be one of those people. Now, your treat.
Oh, yeah.
There have been, you know what it is, don't you? Shit. Yeah, you know what it is. Okay, there have been a lot of people on Twitter dissing Kelly Loughlin's ad, saying it's the worst ad of all time. And that, the worst political ad of all time. And that offends me. So first of all, I'm going to play. It is so false. I'm going to play you the Kelly Loughlin ad. You can decide for yourself if you think it's the worst ad in history. If you think it is, you are going to be wrong. Trust me. Okay, here we go.
Did you know Kelly Loeffler was ranked the most conservative senator in America?
Yep, she's more conservative than Attila the Hun.
Fight China. Got it. Attack big government.
Yeah. Eliminate the liberal scribes.
More conservative than Attila the Hun.
Uh-oh.
Kelly Loeffler, 100% Trump voting record.
I'm Kelly Loeffler. I approve this message.
Okay, so that's Kelly Loeffler's desperate attempt to seem as right-wing as she possibly can.
Yeah, but I think that's kind of like funny.
Yeah,
I don't see that as a bad ad.
I agree. I saw it as a bit fun as well. I did very much enjoy their attempt to play a Mongolian in a way that wouldn't be racially offensive to anyone. I did enjoy that because it's a real minefield, isn't it? Like, which race are we going to piss off here? I'm pretty sure that no race sounds like that. But anyway, and they dirty him up, but they didn't black him up at all, not even slightly. They were very careful with their Mongolian. But yeah, I didn't think it was a great ad, but yeah, as far as political ads go, that's okay.
Yeah.
That's not the worst ad of all time.
No, they're usually much cornier and worse.
Yeah, because you and I know what the worst ad of all time is.
It's also the best ad of all time. That's my favorite.
Because I introduced this ad I'm not going to give you the background, but I introduced this ad to the Hand of God this week, and he just couldn't believe it. He just had to watch it over and over and over again.
He's my hero.
For those who don't know don't know the story, I'll tell you very briefly. There's this guy in West Virginia back in 2018, Don Blankenship. Okay, Don Blankenship was some kind of mining magnate. I should have looked this up before to get the details perfect, but he's basically some kind of mining magnate who had a disaster at his coal plant or something, and people actually died. Like miners actually died in this, and we shouldn't be laughing. But the thing is, he is so shameless that he said it was all rigged and he was set up by the media or something. He went to jail. And the whole time he's protesting his innocence and all the rest of it. And then he comes out of jail, and this shameless guy decides to run for Senate in West Virginia. Okay, and he makes Trump look like a three-dimensional figure. That's all I'm saying. He's quite a caricature, this fellow, and as you're about to discover, and Mitch McConnell wants nothing to do with him at all, because Mitch McConnell wants to win the Senate seat in West Virginia because he was running against Joe Manchin, who is very popular as a Democrat, but they thought this is a winnable seat because West Virginia is very red. Let's not have this clown Don Blankenship running. And so he supported Don Blankenship's opponent in the primary, and Don Blankenship therefore decided to turn all his guns on Mitch McConnell. And he accused him of, because Mitch McConnell's got this Chinese wife whose dad is a shipping magnate, his wife's dad's shipping company had one ship that had drugs on it that was found on it. So then he decided that Mitch McConnell was somehow involved in all this, and he started calling him Cocaine Mitch.
Yeah, that's right. Because I was saying, how did the Cocaine Mitch thing start? And then we went through this.
Yeah. And it all culminated in this one glorious ad that was the high point of all political campaigning history. Enjoy Don Blankenship's contribution. What is truly the worst ad in history. This is your treat.
Hi, I'm Don Blankenship, candidate for U.S. Senate, and I approve this message. Swamp Captain Mitch McConnell has created millions of jobs for China people. While doing so, Mitch has gotten rich. In fact, his China family has given him tens of millions of dollars. Mitch's swamp people are now running false negative ads against me. They are also childishly calling me despicable and mentally ill. The war to drain the swamp and create jobs for West Virginia people has begun. I will beat Joe Manchin and ditch Cocaine Mitch for the sake of the kids.
There is nothing that's left to be said after that ad.
Where did the kids come from?
I don't know. But if they're not his kids, someone needs to go to jail. That's all I'm saying. I promised you many times you would be treated at the end of this podcast. There is your treat. If, by the way, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry we had a lot of visual stuff in this particular podcast. We played a lot of ads. I do recommend that you go back at the very least and see the vision of the press release from Amazon, not from Amazon, from Walmart, and see that ad. At least see that ad. Go back onto Facebook or on YouTube and see that ad because it's worth it. All right, thank you very much, folks. We'll see you next week, maybe on Wednesday, maybe on Friday.